Hey, you back for more information, are you? Alright, let's talk about this elephant a little bit more. Okay, so in my other videos I went over the ears, I went over the tail end. This time, let's talk about these hips. These hips don't lie. So written on these hips, I have all sorts of different words on the baseball bats and the knives that represent some of the things that Rockefellers have used over the past 100 years to control our society or give them benefit economically within our political system to gain advantage for their private interests. And so it all started back in the day whenever John D. was working with Vanderbilt and getting railroad rebates. And from there, they were also getting what they call drawbacks, where they got paid for any of their competitors that had freight on the railways. They would get paid for if their competitors had freight on the railways. They've also used government subsidies, different earmarks, government kickbacks. Down here I have the words bread and circus. Bread and circus was like a term that was used back whenever the Coliseum was in place, and the idea was to keep the public fed and to keep them entertained, and the Coliseum was there to entertain the public, much like our arenas and sports arenas do today. And so I would say sports in a major way is a mechanism to keep the public entertained, to keep them preoccupied, to keep them not thinking about what I'm trying to say is going on here. I have a lot of my own personal trophies. I was into sports for many years myself. I was in swim team, Pinewood Derby, some basketball, some baseball, all sorts of other sports. But right now we're just going to talk more about the hips, and written also on here I have, pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. The Rockefellers, they funded the Green Revolution, which promoted industrial agriculture throughout the United States. Part of that was there were some different marriages in their family too. One of the Rockefellers married one of the McCormicks, which was the founder of a plow, or he invented a plow that later became International Harvester. So that company was sort of married into the Rockefeller family as well. And so was some of the railroads through the Stillman family. William Avery Rockefeller's two sons married James Stillman's two daughters, and Stillman was the head of many railroads and also Citibank. So Citibank was another thing that was, and many railroads were married into their family. Another thing that was married in was weapons, guns, Remington guns most specifically. Marcellus Hartley Dodge, he married Ethel Rockefeller, and so weapons and explosives, they're involved in that as well. And so that with that goes war profiteering. Down here also military contracts. Many of their private interests get military contracts, and they're a part of black budgets. Rockefellers also funded the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute back in World War II. The Kaiser Wilhelm Institute was the premier medical organization that directed what kind of experiments would be taken on in concentration camps. So without the funding of the Rockefellers, a lot of those torture treatments that happened in those concentration camps would have never happened. Also, the Rockefellers were invested in the top 4 most profitable corporations of World War II. I believe one of their Standard Oil subsidiaries is one of them. United States Steel, IG Farben, and IBM. So I say they are the deep state, or over here, through especially the Council on Foreign Relations, they are the shadow government. They've been leading it for a long time. And organizations like the Federal Reserve represent independent government agencies that they also run. And non-governmental organizations are also called. They also donate a lot of money up here to think tanks. Think tanks, their philanthropies give money to think tanks that write PDFs that become public policy. And I say that's like a PSYOP, a psychological operation against the public. and they have black ops. There's also this thing called the Black Eagle Commission, where they have gotten a lot of gold through that. And so they're really into funding both sides of war. They profit from both sides of war. So they create conflict and make a lot of money from those conflicts. So let's go on around this side. Let's talk a little bit more. Oh yeah, the Southern. Hey, how's it going? Security! Security! Take care of that. Alright. So we got the South Improvement Company. They were also involved with that. Or the Southern Improvement Company. I've talked about before, super PACs and super delegates. They're involved in the foundations of that, insider trading. The General Education Board is one that they had funded through the Rockefeller Foundation, and that's one that really upsets me. You all should look that up if you don't know about the General Education Board. Don't have time to talk about it here, but they're also, of course, involved in fractional reserve banking because they are behind the foundations of the Federal Reserve, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and so on. So fiat currency is a big advantage for them. Also, how this all kind of plays out on a local level, excuse me, is with TIF districts. That stands for tax increment financing. And this is a way they use economic development initiatives that go around all around the United States. There's one in every county in Illinois, and they use our real estate tax dollars to fund redevelopment projects in local communities that help make them more money. I could tell you BP is a subsidiary of Standard Oil, and we just had a sewer system installed in Lexington here years ago, and all of the pipes in town here are all BP pipes. So a lot of these redevelopment projects or infrastructure projects comes back to benefiting them in some way. Also written on here, I've talked about the Council on Foreign Relations many times. It's all about gas money. And a lot of these redevelopment projects, the corporations that are involved in them get tax abatements or they're tax exempt. Back in the day, I guess I already talked about railroad rebates on the other side. They're also into credit default swaps and dark markets and offshore accounts and having tax havens. And many of their corporations that are invested in the Council on Foreign Relations are the biggest tax dodging corporations there are. They are the ruling elite. A lot of people call them the oligarchs or plutocrats or ruling class, but I call them the Rockefellers. We got to call it for what they are, and if we keep giving them faceless titles, hey Richard, we're never going to be able to do anything about their wealth and power. So we got to call it for what it is, call them out for who they are, and we got to bring justice back, and we got to remind DC who they're working for. We got to lock up the corrupt, and we got to remove public officials from private councils. And we got to have some more honesty in our politics. And until we do that, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So, people, if you want to write my name in 2020, I'm just a regular guy, you know, an honest artist that here is to do better for America. So write in Kasey Wells, and let's take our country back. Thank you for watching.